So welcome to another Startup Centre Victoria meet-up with special guest. Today is Jackie Yong. But first, I'd just like to welcome everybody. Thanks to the ongoing support of the City Greater Bendigo and my own company, KA Rural Enterprises. We thought these meetups were important to keep going, and each month we'll have another business person. This is about talking business to business, sharing the learnings. Before we start, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on. Now, normally both Jackie and I would be on Dja Dja Wurrung country, but I'm actually in Warragul today, guest of Startup Gippsland. So I'll extend that acknowledgement statewide because I've been travelling a lot this week. So, Jackie, I'm going to let you tell your story, but the reason you've been invited on is because recently at our Accelerator program of Startup Centre Victoria, you did a launch of your product, and it's quite a unique product, and I think you've got a really great story to tell. But the interesting thing is, since that launch, you've actually taken a slightly different direction, which is making this story even more interesting. And your startup journey, it is all very fresh, all very raw, and we're looking forward to hearing a little bit about what gave you the idea and how it's evolved over time. So welcome, Jackie, and thank you for sharing your story with us. First of all, tell us, what is your product that you are taking to market? Give us a description. Tell us what it is.
Thanks for having me, Kerry. So my product is actually hair-infused compost. So what we see is that hair is a valuable resource and has great fertilizing ability, and in the right environment makes amazing food, soil health. It's good for soil health. So this is our little product. So when I started to look at what's available, I had a look at nurseries and just to see what was there. And what we found was there were big bags. Sorry, I've got a cat that's very smoochy. Bad timing. So yeah, we found that the big bags, 20 litres, and there wasn't much information as to what the compost was. So we had composted cow manure, compost this, but we didn't really talk about what makes a really good compost. So I'll just jump back about 10 years ago, when I was young and all, trendy and funky. I was hairdressing and, we're collecting hair and looking at the hair and going, oh, what's hair great for? And as a woman, we know that hair holds lots of moisture because you go in the drain and there's all this hair and holds water. So I remember a time where we were in the drought. So I thought, I wonder if hair would be of any use. So I started to collect the hair and started to look into what is human hair really good for. And the amount of research that came out was it made great fertilizer. It made all these, it was so beneficial for the soils. It was helping tomatoes yield by next to 30–40%. Oh, this is fantastic. And I thought the journey started then. And then it took another detour. And the detour was that I ended up opening a composting facility. So the composting facility is based in Stanhope, and we looked at diverting large scale of organic waste to our site. And I kind of wondered, what was the reason for that, Kerry?
I'm waiting to hear. We'd love to hear. Keep going.
And I thought I had to learn about making compost. I knew hair was great, but I had no idea about composting. I had no idea about soils, no idea about farming. And I felt that was the missing link to where we are now, to where I am now. So learning how to compost, the science of composting, what products make a good compost, what do farmers want, what's missing in our soils, what's so important about compost. So coming out of the commercial composting industry was what's missing for our home gardeners. So we produce for farmers, and we produce really good quality product. And we spoke a lot about biological farming, biology to farmers. So I wasn't sure the conversation was being had with home gardeners. So the whole idea was, how do I provide a highly dense, microbial dense product for home gardeners? So there's lots of emphasis for farmers to improve their soils. But what if we could do that in our gardens? So the whole idea,
a very different market you're talking about. Farmers, high volume, paddocks, and you're turning your attention to more a retail market rather than the big, more wholesale-y with the farmers. So have you found a difference in how you've approached your market this way?
I think so. Well, I think yes and no. So I think that's part of the learning curve, is that I want consumers and gardeners to have the ability to get good product as a farmer would, as to just bypassing. So, my plan was to always, when I finish hairdressing, I say to my customers, I want you to have healthy food, but we're reliant on farmers to grow healthy food for us. And there's a cost to that, because one, not all farmers are prepared to make those changes. Two, where's that going? So then it came back to, what if we had control over the food we grew? And what if we could offer the same product that goes to the farmers to a backyard farmer? And I think that opportunity is now starting to come through. So for me, it was like, well, hair's great, but how do we do the low-hanging fruit? How do I get out there, and especially in particular hair, how do I get people used to the idea that there's good products out there and we can change our soils by making the right choices?
Apart from that, how do you get enough hair to actually quantify what you want to do? There's a million questions here.
Yeah.
So what have been the challenges in developing this idea? And you're alluding to one, educating people. What have been the other challenges, Jackie?
So getting the processing of the hair right. So I don't collect the hair. I actually have a joint venture or a partnership with sustainable salons, and sustainable salons implement lots of sustainable systems into beauty salons, hairdressing salons, and dog grooming salons. So with the hairdressing industry, we're one of the highest producers of waste. So by utilising them, we collect the hair, source the hair from them, we process it, and then put it into our bags.
So tell us exactly what point in time you're at. Are you actually selling your product, and where's it being stocked? What point have you got to in this journey?
So yes, we have just got into the market. So the first thing was getting to market, obviously, is what to do. So start a website, a Facebook, Instagram, and I've put onto Big Cartel. Because there was lots of options out there. There was Etsy, but looking at Etsy, there wasn't many soils. But to set up a shop page on Facebook, I needed to have a place to send people. So someone said, why don't you try Big Cartel? There was no cost. It tracks your clientele and still provides data. So we set up Big Cartel, but then I got some local interest as well, just from chatting to local businesses. So we're currently just in 2 stores in Bendigo. But what I had found was, when I went to market, was that there was a bit of a hurdle to the startup or the selling.
Yes, and this is where it gets exciting, because since we first planned this meetup, there's been a major decision made. So you're going to spill the beans now and tell us what's happening.
So when I first started Hair Power, we came up with a name because we were part of Startup CV, and I thought, this is quite a good name. It explains what we do.
You weren't 100% sure. I can remember you putting it out there and saying to everyone, what do you think? And we should explain, it was an accelerator program run through Startup Centre Victoria. So that was an opportunity to test your product and use other aspiring business people to give you their feedback as well. So at what point have you decided a change is needed?
It was really testing that market. So we've been to a few markets. And one thing that came up a lot was, is this for my hair? So even though the words would say hair power or the hair power compost, psychologically, when we think about, if you go down a hair care aisle, hair care, hair shampoo, hair conditioner. So from my understanding is our eyes gravitate to hair and assume it's for the head, because that's what we've been conditioned to do.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically you're rebranding your product.
I am.
You are.
So I've been focusing on what's in it. And one of the most powerful things about hair is that in the right environment, it attracts really beneficial fungi and bacteria. And in the soils, enhances the ability for that to grow and improve soil health. So I've decided to go with the end result. So I've called it Soils Alive, because as opposed to talking about what's in it, what's the end goal and what's the end purpose of using a product.
And you found a name that hasn't been taken by anyone else yet. So.
It had been taken, we just had to do some clever editing. So as opposed to having soils at S-O-I-L-S, we decided to put the Z at the end of soils.
Yeah. Okay. So, is this a huge setback, because you obviously already had your branding on the packaging? How hard is it going to be to flip to this new brand?
I don't think it's going to be too hard. I'll keep following on our Facebook page just to change the handle. It doesn't change who we are, it changes the name of it. And I think when I'm on Facebook and Instagram, I talk a lot about why a product is really good. I talk a lot about the biology, the nutritional dense food that we grow if we use healthy soils. And also too, when I first started doing the printing, I kept that at a minimum order. So, I think one thing about startup is making sure of a cash flow. So, it probably wasn't the most cost effective because I'm doing a minimal amount, but it also is lower risk. If I had done a run for 10,000, it would have been a bit cheaper, but I would still have probably a lot of excess.
So it's allowed you to test the market.
You've
and you can still get feedback on your products, so you can still gather that.
Yeah, that's right.
Slowly. So it sounds like you're talking about soil nutrition. You've done a power of research. You come from a hairdressing background, so this is where you recognise the opportunity or the problem. When it's waste, it's a problem. But when you can see what it can be applied to, it becomes an opportunity. In other business, did you run your own salon? I'm just trying to get a sense of where you got your business acumen from. Where have you gone to? You've researched your product and how it can be developed, but where have you sourced your business advice from?
So I ran my hair salon for 8 years, and then I ran the composting business as well for another 8 years. So I've been involved, but it is interesting how business has changed over the last 10 to 15 years.
It's always changing. That's the thing, you've got to keep up with it. So,
yeah, absolutely. So what I would have known 10, 12 years, 15 years ago is slightly different. Back then we didn't have social media. I remember, social media was very new to us. Now it's pretty much a forefront of our businesses. How do we engage our community? Conversations to have. Although they're different platforms, I do see how much it is similar. So when I first started this hair salon, we went out and connected with the community a lot, sitting in the cafes, talking to local residents, local shop owners. I guess part of that now is with lockdown, we didn't have the ability to do that. we do social media to connect and create a little catch-up rooms and connections.
Yeah. So in terms of, where do you see this business going? You're obviously right at that very raw, launch it, rebrand it, and, but in terms of the vision down the track to 5 years, how scalable is this product? Where do you think it's going to go to? Where are you aiming to take it to?
Oh, I'd love to do it nationwide. So at the moment, we are aiming at household because it's low hanging fruit and it's small. But with the prices of fertilizers, they've gone up 400% or 500%. We also see the ability to enter that market as well. It may not necessarily be with hair, but I think we see the keratin that's in hair, an opportunity that will be opening up for us. And keratin is in chicken feathers, is in wool, and we're starting to see these emerging markets coming through. And these are waste products that have yet to be found resourceful. But I think by looking at hair, that opens up the possibilities.
Well, hair, I think back on the heritage programs. I love watching old houses being restored, and they often talk about bullock hair being mixed in with the mortar to hold. So hair's been used in many ways in the past. So this is another new application.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've found for it. So in terms of, do you think through your sourcing, I mean, it's about getting quantities as you scale up, and also do you see yourself moving into, what sort of premises do you need to produce this product at the moment?
Great question, Kerry. I think I've been, ignoring those questions. Not sure.
Yeah.
So we know that over 400 tonnes of hair can go to landfill, and so my calculations, 400 tonnes by the time I mix it could potentially, if I was looking at agricultural land, could remediate 266,000 acres of land. Doesn't seem like a lot, but for the amount of hair, 400 kilos, and to be able to recover, remediate or improve the amount of land, that's a huge amount.
So I'm getting a sense, right from the beginning, you've been talking about your journey, waste and the environment seems to be something that you're really interested in. Do you think that every business opportunity is going to be along the path of environmental? Is that something that's really important to you?
I think at the moment it is. I think that we don't understand the value of waste. We see it as a waste as opposed to a resource. So even being within the waste industry with Sustainable Victoria, we've seen a lot of changes occur. When I started Biomix, 12, 13 years ago, the councils didn't have green waste programs. They didn't have FOGO programs. And now that's become such a big part of our lives that it's almost habitual that we use our green bins. And if we didn't, you kind of feel a bit naked, don't you? It's like, we're missing this part of our life. And also with, circular economy, we're finding things that we wouldn't have thought as repurposeful and finding a purpose for it.
And the circular economy is such a big topic, but it is really hard to find specific examples of businesses growing out of the circular economy, which is what makes your product such a great one to showcase to, that it is possible to have a private enterprise contributing to that circular economy. So well done you on stepping up in that respect. So in terms of being such a new startup, what advice would you give to other startups? And you've already mentioned a few, but let's go through a tips list of
tip list.
Yeah.
Keeping mindset, I think, is a good one to have. As you're aware, Kerry, like business isn't a straight road. There's ups and downs, and I think a healthy mindset helps, because sometimes, and I still do this quite a fair bit, you go into comparative mode or a lack mode of my product isn't good enough. Something I do a bit of nowadays, and I have to be pulled line and go, well, it is great, and believing that what we are doing, or what I'm doing, is good, and believing in it.
Yeah. So, and you, I can see you're so passionate when you're talking about it. In terms of you're going to rebrand, and I know a few people have come in yet and haven't heard that exciting news, but Hair Power is going to be rebranded to Soils Alive. So once you've got that all sorted out, how do you think, you've talked about Facebook, Instagram, but what is your number one way of driving this product up to scale it to what you're envisaging it should be?
So I think, and I should have gone back to this earlier on, was that the big change I see too. So when I first started, I thought be online sales. So and I think this came upon with a rebranding, was that's not my market. So even though I've come in thinking, yes, Hair Power was going to be online sales, that's where I'm driving my market from, that's changed, because when I start looking at the gap of the market, I look at, florists now are selling beautiful pot plants and things like that. I thought, oh, well, that would be a great market to be in. Because the bags are resealable, so you can use some of it and seal and put it away. Places such as Whole Food, Bendigo, I think, is also another fantastic opportunity. But if you find a product that had hair in it, in that food industry, might not have been complementary. So I think then in my marketing and sales, it'll be a business to business. And I think that would be a different reach.
So you're just still tweaking it as you go along. And that doesn't mean you can't try other markets while
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, for a startup, sometimes we don't know what's going to work until we put our foot into it. It's great to have a business plan and go, yep, this, have a business plan and go, these are my steps. But sometimes those steps don't work. Sometimes they don't work. Maybe they're not the right application for the business.
Yeah. Okay, great. And where are you finding is your best source of information and support? It can be lonely when you're starting off a new business. Where are you finding the support that you need to bolster you up? You talked a little bit before about feeling down on certain days and having to reassure yourself, but you don't do it all alone, do you? Do you have places you go?
We have some people we connect with. You'd be surprised. So I think from the Startup CV, there's a bunch of us that have connected, and we catch up, been trying to catch up once a month. And I think that's been really good, and making sure that we've got each other's back. Others for me has been previous people I've worked with in business, just trying to get feedback that aren't too close. And honest feedback is important too.
It's a big point. Your friends sometimes don't want to be too brutal, and that's something in business you just can't afford to be nice. You have to say what you think, but also bearing in mind, are we the target customers that you're looking at? So sometimes you have to go outside your circle of friends to find those actual customers. So that's good. Yeah. So I'm aware I've got a few of your Startup Centre Victoria colleagues listening in. So if anyone would like to ask a question, they're very welcome to jump in here. And because we've just been chatting and enjoying this little catch up on where your product is and looking forward to it. Yeah, so Bree's just saying, how are you? That's a good general question. We talked about looking after yourself in business. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's nice to connect back through, have like-minded people, and I think too, when we talk about our journeys and know that we're supported.
Yeah, Yeah. And in such a unique product, do you think it's easier to take a unique product like yours to market as opposed to something that's more generic? Do you think you've got an advantage by having something really different?
I think they both have their pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
I think they both have pros and cons. So being unique, I've got no competition. So I do need to explain and educate a little bit more. But if I had a product that was competing with others, then I'd have less visibility because I have other products to compete with. So I think so for me, I think about what can I offer? What is my point of difference? And what do I want my clients or customers to achieve out of it? How's it going to benefit them?
Yeah. I'm just going to jump in, and you're saying you've got no competitors at the moment. I just need to warn you, if you've got a good product, the competitors will follow. And then it's your job to keep ahead of them and keep claiming that space. And it may mean reinventing yourself many times over. So, and that's a compliment. If people are copying you, it means you're onto something. And with a new distinct product like yours, it's about thinking ahead to what you also need to in terms of trademarks and reserving those URLs that you want for that. So that's something to bear in mind. Okay, now we have we've got a couple of questions here. So with the rebranding, are you looking to change the style of imaging of your product as well, given that your target market has changed?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the rebranding give me more time to have clarity over what does my market look like. So even though this is done and it's fun and it's colourful, I still like the colours. So I know the colours work, but it made me more clear on what I want my clients to be. So I want them to be, I don't want to have to conform to them too much. So they'll be educated. They're going to have money so that they're not shopping at Bunnings, and they want quality over quantity. And that's my main one. And I think part of looking in the industry is that there is lack of quality in the products.
But it sounds very economical, the fact that you can just take a bit out and spread it around. So another question is, how are you funding your business? Do you need to fund your business? Because you said already you've started off very small quantities to test it out.
A little bit of funding. So I've put a little bit into it. So I'll do a bit of work on the side that will support it. And it's like any business. What stays in the business, is managing your savings. So for me, I have X amount in there. I watch where it goes. So what if I can, I'll do some myself, but it's building those relationships. So coming from the compost industry, I do have those connections. So instead of buying 25 tons, I just do things on a micro scale. So I might buy 200 or 300 kilos. I spend, it's my time, but I'm not putting value in my time. So it's not money being spent physically, it's just my time. And I think with business is that most startup, our time is what consumes us the most.
Absolutely, until it gets to scale up stage, and then you are looking at investing. But I love the way you've leveraged relationships, and I've come across that story with others starting off. There was a lady over in the Western District that wanted to manufacture skivvies, the old-fashioned skivvies, but she had to find someone, and she wanted it made in Australia, but they were used to the big quantities. So she had to negotiate and say, well, look, I just need to test this out, make sure it works, and then I'll scale up. So it was on the promise that, yes, if you work with me now, I will send bigger, I will purchase bigger quantities, send more business your way. And I think if you find the right people to work with, they understand that. So it's always worth a conversation, and useful that you already had those contacts. But I think there's a lot to be said for walking in the door and having a conversation, isn't it? Even if you don't know them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think being upfront and saying that we are a startup, because I think for most businesses, they've all been there. You know, we've all started from somewhere. So you get a bit of understanding. And I started talking about rebranding and speaking to a local logo firm. So I'm a startup. So they straight away, they're a bit more empathetic, which is what we want them to be, because they've been there and they support us. So,
and there's always the promise of more business as you grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think when we do small, it leaves the error is the risk is minimal, as opposed to, you know, going big and hard. I used to go big and hard, but those risks are expanded and you carry more risk. And if you fail, then you take more down with you. Whereas I think the slow, gradual is more calculated.
Well, on the news this morning, all I'm hearing is condemnation of some of the food companies using TikTok and hashtags to get teenagers to promote their junk food. So in this convolute way, I'm coming around to a comment from, I think it's Bree, was it, about spring is around the corner and there could be some fun Instagram hashtags of your product. So she's doing your marketing for you.
Yeah, she's
already.
Great, Bree.
And to tag your great business. So yes, it is the season. Obviously, are you feeling pressured to get your new rebranding out?
I am, and that's why I said I had a lady that's been working with. I'm arming and ahhing. You know, I feel guilty. We've been working for a few weeks, but exactly for that reason, is aiming for the spring. I have a couple of nurseries that are quite interested in stocking it. So I feel like without finishing the branding, I'm kind of treading water a little bit.
Yeah, and obviously gardeners are a very prolific group of people, so I've heard. It's not me, but they're out there, and social media is such a wonderful tool, as you've alluded to, with Facebook and Instagram with that. So so how many weeks, a month? We're looking for this next launch of your branding. We'll have to organise that, Jackie. You're going to have to let us know.
Well, I'm going to a field day up in Gunnedah, and that's on the 16th and 17th of August. So I'm hoping, but I don't think so. I think I'll be ready if I'm ready for 1st of spring. So if I had to give myself a goal, 1st of spring. Okay. Actually, last week before the spring, just so we can.
All right. Well, we'll have to share it in our Startup Central Victoria newsletters, your new brandings. So you'll have to send us some photos of that. So any last questions? Thank you to our audience for putting those in. Oh, is your product intended for individual gardeners? Yes. So you can answer that.
So at this stage, yes, it is for individual gardeners, but I'm also looking at expanding. So perhaps looking at 1-ton bags, and if there's interest to go
1-ton bags, that sounds huge.
Well, that would be for if you hobby farmer. Yeah. And then maybe, you know, if I do have a relationship kind of up in Albury, so I have access to a bit of bigger land, so we might be looking at doing larger quantities for farmers.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the community gardens is, you know, that there are people that are very serious about producing their own food. There certainly has been a big turnaround in that area. So we're thinking you might be on a winner, Jackie, and here we are interviewing you right at the very beginning of all this. So maybe we better book you in for a year's time and a 2 years' time, and we'll just plot your progress as your business flies, and I bet there will be new learnings each time you talk to us. You know, you've already taken a massive twist in your journey and reset your focus, and that's a sign that you're paying attention, you're in tune, as you say, out there testing the market, getting a feel for it, and And it all seems so obvious when you say how people perceive the product. And we're thinking, why didn't we see that? Why didn't we get that? But it's getting out there, testing it, and making it work. So thank you so much for coming on with us today and having this chat with us. It's been a pleasure to have you as our guest for July.
Oh, thank you, Kerry. Thanks for having me.